purebred heifer, without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. Give it to Eleazar the priest. It is to be taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Then Eleazar the priest is to take some of its blood on his finger and sprinkle it 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting. While he watches, the heifer is to be burned, its hide, flesh, blood, and offal. The priest is to take some cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool, and throw them onto the burning heifer. After that, the priest must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. He may then come into the camp, but he will be ceremonially unclean till evening. The man who burns it must also wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he too will be unclean till evening. A man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and put them in a ceremonially clean place outside the camp. They shall be kept by the Israelite community for use in the water of cleansing. It is for purification from sin. The man who gathers up the ashes of the heifer must also wash his clothes, and he too will be unclean till evening. This will be a lasting ordinance, both for the Israelites and for the aliens living among them. Whoever touches the dead body of anyone will be unclean for 7 days. He must purify himself with the water on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. Then he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd and 7th days, he will not be clean. Whoever touches the dead body of anyone and fails to purify himself defiles the Lord's tabernacle. That person must be cut off from Israel. Because the water of cleansing has not been sprinkled on him, he is unclean. His uncleanness remains on him. This is the law that applies when a person dies in a tent. Anyone who enters the tent and anyone who is in it will be unclean for 7 days. And every open container without a lid fastened on it will be unclean. Anyone out in the open who touches someone who has been killed with a sword, or someone who has died a natural death, or anyone who touches a human bone or a grave will be unclean for 7 days. For the unclean person, put some ashes from the burnt purification offering into a jar and pour fresh water over them. Then a man who is ceremonially clean is to take some hyssop, dip it in the water, and sprinkle the tent and all the furnishings and the people who were there. He must also sprinkle anyone who has touched a human bone or a grave, or someone who has been killed, or someone who has died a natural death. The man who is clean is to sprinkle the unclean person on the 3rd and 7th days, and on the 7th day he is to purify him. The person being cleansed must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and that evening he will be clean. But if a person who is unclean does not purify himself, he must be cut off from the community, because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of cleansing has not been sprinkled on him, and he is unclean. This is a lasting ordinance for them. The man who sprinkles the water of cleansing must also wash his clothes, and anyone who touches the water of cleansing will be unclean till evening. Anything that an unclean person touches becomes unclean, and anyone who touches it becomes unclean till evening.
잘 믿으면 주님이 나에게 뭐를 주셔야 돼요? 복을 주셔야 된다는 거예요. 적어도 복을 주시지 않더라도 내가 두려워하는 이런 일들은 나에게 일어나게 하시면 안 되는 거예요. 우리는 다 그런 생각을 가지고 살아갑니다. 그러면 주님께 순종한다고 하지만 그것은 누구를 위한 순종입니까? 나를 위한 순종이에요. 그러면 그렇게 나를 위해서 순종하는 동안은 인생의 주인이 누구입니까? 나라는 거예요. 그래서 하나님께 대놓고 불순종하는 것도 내가 내 인생의 주인으로 살아가는 모습이죠.
Chapter 20. In the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived at the desert of Zin, and they stayed at Kadesh. There Miriam died and was buried. Now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. They quarreled with Moses and said,
"If only we had died when our brothers fell dead before the Lord. Why did you bring the Lord's community into this desert, that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? It has no grain or figs, grapevines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink.
Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting and fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord said to Moses,
Take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community, so they and their livestock can drink.
So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them,
Listen, you rebels. Must we bring you water out of this rock?
Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron,
Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them.
These were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and where he showed himself holy among them. Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom, saying,
This is what your brother Israel says. You know about all the hardships that have come upon us. Our forefathers went down into Egypt, and we lived there many years. The Egyptians mistreated us and our fathers. But when we cried out to the Lord, he heard our cry and sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. Now we are here at Kadesh, a town on the edge of your territory. Please, let us pass through your country. We will not go through any field or vineyard or drink water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway and not turn to the right or to the left until we have passed through your territory.
But Edom answered,
You may not pass through here. If you try, we will march out and attack you with the sword.
The Israelites replied,
We will go along the main road, and if we or our livestock drink any of your water, we will pay for it. We only want to pass through on foot, nothing else.
Again they answered.
You may not pass through.
Then Edom came out against them with a large and powerful army. Since Edom refused to let them go through their territory, Israel turned away from them. The whole Israelite community set out from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. At Mount Hor, near the border of Edom, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron,
Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land I give the Israelites, because both of you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Get Aaron and his son Eleazar, and take them up Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments, and put them on his son Eleazar, for Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will die there.
Moses did as the Lord commanded. They went up Mount Hor in the sight of the whole community. Moses removed Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar, and Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, and when the whole community learned that Aaron had died, the entire house of Israel mourned for him 30 days.
주신다는 것입니다. 여러분, 우리 잘 부르는 찬송가 중에 이런 찬송이 있습니다. 내 영혼이 은총이고. 어떻게 계속 연결이 되죠? 내 영혼이 은총이고 중한 죄짐 벗고 보니 슬픔 많은 이 세상도 천국으로 화도다. 할렐루야 찬양하세. 내 모든 죄 사함받고 주 예수와.
Chapter 21. When the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming along the road to Atharim, he attacked the Israelites and captured some of them. Then Israel made this vow to the Lord.
If you will deliver these people into our hands, we will totally destroy their cities.
The Lord listened to Israel's plea and gave the Canaanites over to them. They completely destroyed them and their towns, so the place was named Hormah. They traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom. But the people grew impatient on the way. They spoke against God and against Moses and said,
Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the desert? There is no bread, there is no water, and we detest this miserable food.
Then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said,
We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us.
So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses,
Make a snake and put it up on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live.
So Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole. Then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, he lived. The Israelites moved on and camped at Oboth. Then they set out from Oboth and camped in Abarim, in the desert that faces Moab toward the sunrise. From there they moved on and camped in the Zered Valley. They set out from there and camped alongside the Arnon, which is in the desert extending into Amorite territory. The Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. That is why the book of the wars of the Lord says, Waheb in Suphah and the ravines, the Arnon and the slopes of the ravines that lead to the site of Ar, and lie along the border of Moab. From there they continued on to Beer, the well where the Lord said to Moses,
Gather the people together, and I will give them water.
Then Israel sang this song.
Spring up, O well. Sing about it. About the well that the princes dug, that the nobles of the people sank, the nobles with scepters and staffs.
Then they went from the desert to Mattanah, from Mattanah to Nahaliel, from Nahaliel to Bamoth, and from Bamoth to the valley in Moab, where the top of Pisgah overlooks the wasteland. Israel sent messengers to say to Sihon, king of the Amorites,
Let us pass through your country. We will not turn aside into any field or vineyard, or drink water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway until we have passed through your territory.
But Sihon would not let Israel pass through his territory. He mustered his entire army and marched out into the desert against Israel. When he reached Jahaz, he fought with Israel. Israel, however, put him to the sword and took over his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, but only as far as the Ammonites, because their border was fortified. Israel captured all the cities of the Amorites and occupied them, including Heshbon and all its surrounding settlements. Heshbon was the city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and had taken from him all his land, as far as the Arnon. That is why the poets say, Come to Heshbon, and let it be rebuilt. Let Sihon's city be restored. Fire went out from Heshbon, a blaze from the city of Sihon. It consumed Ar of Moab, the citizens of Arnon's heights. Woe to you, O Moab! You are destroyed, O people of Chemosh. He has given up his sons as fugitives, and his daughters as captives, to Sihon, king of the Amorites. But we have overthrown them. Heshbon is destroyed all the way to Dibon. We have demolished them as far as Nophah, which extends to Medeba. So Israel settled in the land of the Amorites. After Moses had sent spies to Jazer, the Israelites captured its surrounding settlements and drove out the Amorites who were there. Then they turned and went up along the road toward Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, and his whole army marched out to meet them in battle at Edrei. The Lord said to Moses,
Do not be afraid of him, for I have handed him over to you with his whole army and his land. Do to him what you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon.
So they struck him down, together with his sons and his whole army, leaving them no survivors, and they took possession of his land.
몸에 기병이 온 겁니다. 한 주에 걸린 것입니다. 그래서 어떻게 하면 내가 살 수 있을까 하는데 굿뉴스, 복음을 들어요. 이스라엘에 가면 용한 선지자가 있다는 것입니다. 그래서 그 선지자를 만나러 갔습니다. 성경에 보시면 이 나아만 장군이 그 선지자를 만나러 갔는데 어떤 선물을 준비해 가냐면요, 은 10달란트와 금 6,000개라고 합니다. 근데 우리에겐 감이 안 와닿아서 주석서를 찾아봤더니 은 10달란트는요 340kg이 됩니다. 은이 얼마나 대단합니까? 금 6,000개는요 68kg입니다. 엄청난 물질을 가지고 간 것이었습니다. 내가 신에게 이런 놀라운 엄청난 물질을 바치면 신도 감동하셔서
Chapter 22. Then the Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab and camped along the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was terrified, because there were so many people. Indeed, Moab was filled with dread because of the Israelites. The Moabites said to the elders of Midian,
This horde is going to lick up everything around us, as an ox licks up the grass of the field.
So Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to summon Balaam, son of Beor, who was at Pethor near the river in his native land. Balak said,
A people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the land and have settled next to me. Now come and put a curse on these people, because they are too powerful for me. Perhaps then I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the country. For I know that those you bless are blessed, and those you curse are cursed.
The elders of Moab and Midian left, taking with them the fee for divination. When they came to Balaam, they told him what Balak had said.
Spend the night here,
Balaam said to them,
and I will bring you back the answer the Lord gives me.
So the Moabite princes stayed with him. God came to Balaam and asked,
Who are these men with you?
Balaam said to God,
Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent me this message. A people that has come out of Egypt covers the face of the land. Now come and put a curse on them for me. Perhaps then I will be able to fight them and drive them away.
But God said to Balaam,
Do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people, because they are blessed.
The next morning Balaam got up and said to Balak's princes,
Go back to your own country, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you.
So the Moabite princes returned to Balak and said,
Balaam refused to come with us.
Then Balak sent other princes, more numerous and more distinguished than the first. They came to Balaam and said,
This is what Balak, son of Zippor, says. Do not let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. Come and put a curse on these people for me.
But Balaam answered them,
Even if Balak gave me his palace filled with silver and gold, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord my God. Now stay here tonight as the others did, and I will find out what else the Lord will tell me.
That night God came to Balaam and said,
Since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you.
Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, she turned off the road into a field. Balaam beat her to get her back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between 2 vineyards, with walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it, so he beat her again. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead, and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn, either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat her with his staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and she said to Balaam,
What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?
Balaam answered the donkey,
You have made a fool of me. If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now.
The donkey said to Balaam,
Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you?
No,
he said. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord asked him,
Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you, because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If she had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared her.
Balaam said to the angel of the Lord,
I have sinned. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now, if you are displeased, I will go back.
The angel of the Lord said to Balaam,
Go with the men, but speak only what I tell you.
So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at the Moabite town on the Arnon border, at the edge of his territory. Balak said to Balaam,
Did I not send you an urgent summons? Why didn't you come to me? Am I really not able to reward you?
Well, I have come to you now.
Balaam replied.
But can I say just anything? I must speak only what God puts in my mouth.
Then Balaam went with Balak to Kiriath Huzoth. Balak sacrificed cattle and sheep, and gave some to Balaam and the princes who were with him. The next morning, Balak took Balaam up to Bamoth Baal, and from there he saw part of the people.
본 적이 없다. 어떤 교회는요, 박사학위 소지자들이 하도 많아서 내가 고등학교밖에 못 나왔다 하면 감히 못 들어가는 그런 교회들이 있습니다. 어떤 교회들은 너무나 부유한 사람들이 많아서 가난한 사람들이 가기에 참 불편한 교회들이 있어요. 여러분, 우리 복음에는요, 어떠한 차별도 없기 때문에 우리 교회가 진정으로 복음을 믿고 복음을 실천한다면 어느 누가 오더라도 환영을 받고 어느 누가 오더라도 부담을 안아줄 수 있는 것이 진정한 교회다운 교회임을 믿으시기 바랍니다. 그런 의미에서 복음은요, 포괄성이 있고요. 하지만 동시에 배타성이 있습니다. 배타성이라고 하는 것은 무슨 뜻이냐면 구원은 누구를 통해서만 이루어질 수 있다는 것입니까? 예수 그리스도를 통해서. 사도행전에 이런 말씀이 있습니다. 우리 한번 같이 읽어보실까요? 다른 이로서는 구원을 받을 수 없나니 천하 사람 중에 구원을 받을 만한 다른 이름을 우리에게 주신 일이 없음이라 하였더라. 아멘. 다른 이로는 우리가 구원을 얻을 수가 없는 것입니다. 아까 그 나아만 장군의 스토리를 한번 생각해 보세요. 왜 굳이 요단강에 가서 목욕을 해야 됩니까? 그렇지 않습니까? 그 나아만 장군이 기분 나빠서 그렇게 얘기했습니다. 아니, 아람이라고 하는 내 조국에 가면 훨씬 더 좋은 물, 좋은 온천도 많은데 내가 왜 굳이 저 흙탕물인 요단강에 가서 씻어야 되는가?
Chapter 23. Balaam said,
Build me 7 altars here, and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me.
Balak did as Balaam said, and the two of them offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak,
Stay here beside your offering while I go aside. Perhaps the Lord will come to meet with me. Whatever he reveals to me, I will tell you.
Then he went off to a barren height. God met with him, and Balaam said,
I have prepared 7 altars, and on each altar I have offered a bull and a ram.
The Lord put a message in Balaam's mouth and said,
Go back to Balak and give him this message.
So he went back to him and found him standing beside his offering with all the princes of Moab. Then Balaam uttered his oracle.
Balak brought me from Aram, the king of Moab from the eastern mountains. Come, he said, curse Jacob for me. Come, denounce Israel. How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom the Lord has not denounced? From the rocky peaks I see them. From the heights I view them. I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number the 4th part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my end be like theirs.
Balak said to Balaam,
What have you done to me? I brought you to curse my enemies, but you have done nothing but bless them.
He answered.
Must I not speak what the Lord puts in my mouth?
Then Balak said to him,
Come with me to another place where you can see them. You will see only a part, but not all of them. And from there, curse them for me.
So he took him to the field of Zophim on the top of Pisgah, and there he built 7 altars, and offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Balaam said to Balak,
Stay here beside your offering, while I meet with him over there.
The Lord met with Balaam, and put a message in his mouth, and said,
Go back to Balak and give him this message.
So he went to him, and found him standing beside his offering with the princes of Moab. Balak asked him,
What did the Lord say?
Then he uttered his oracle.
Arise, Balak, and listen. Hear me, son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? I have received a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot change it. No misfortune is seen in Jacob, no misery observed in Israel. The Lord their God is with them. The shout of the king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. They have the strength of a wild ox. There is no sorcery against Jacob, no divination against Israel. It will now be said of Jacob and of Israel, see what God has done. The people rise like a lioness. They rouse themselves like a lion that does not rest till he devours his prey and drinks the blood of his victims.
Then Balak said to Balaam,
Neither curse them at all, nor bless them at all.
Balaam answered,
Did I not tell you I must do whatever the Lord says?
Then Balak said to Balaam,
Come, let me take you to another place. Perhaps it will please God to let you curse them for me from there.
And Balak took Balaam to the top of Peor, overlooking the wasteland. Balaam said,
Build me 7 altars here, and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me.
Balak did as Balaam had said, and offered a bull and a ram on each altar.
그 교회들은 예수님의 것입니다. 그렇다면 지금 갈라디아서의 그 갈라디아 교인들이 겪고 있는 그 문제와 그 위기와 그 상황은 누구의 것입니까? 예수님 것이죠. 그러면 그 교회들을 누가 책임지실까요? 예수님이 책임지시는 것입니다. 여러분, 우리를 예수님께서 값주고 사셨습니다. 그렇다면 우리의 인생, 우리의 가정, 우리의 사업, 우리의 교회 다 누구의 것입니까? 예수님 것이죠. 지금 여러분 다 힘들어하는 문제들이 있으시죠? 눈물로 기도하는 기도의 제목들 다 있으시죠? 그러면 그 문제, 그 상황은 누가 책임지시는 것입니까? 예수님께서 책임지시는 것입니다. 우리가 그것을 깨닫고 나면, 그 복음의 위대함을 깨닫고 나면 우리는 갈라디아서 1장 5절을 함께 고백할 수 있을 것입니다. 우리 한번 마지막으로 읽겠습니다. 영광이 그에게
Chapter 24. Now when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he did not resort to sorcery as at other times, but turned his face toward the desert. When Balaam looked out and saw Israel encamped tribe by tribe, the Spirit of God came upon him, and he uttered his oracle.
The oracle of Balaam, son of Beor, the oracle of one whose eye sees clearly, the oracle of one who hears the words of God, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate, and whose eyes are opened. How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. Like valleys they spread out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the waters. Water will flow from their buckets. Their seed will have abundant water. Their king will be greater than Agag. Their kingdom will be exalted. God brought them out of Egypt. They have the strength of a wild ox. They devour hostile nations and break their bones in pieces. With their arrows they pierce them. Like a lion they crouch and lie down. Like a lioness, who dares to rouse them? May those who bless you be blessed, and those who curse you be cursed.
Then Balak's anger burned against Balaam. He struck his hands together and said to him,
I summoned you to curse my enemies, but you have blessed them these 3 times. Now leave at once and go home. I said I would reward you handsomely, but the Lord has kept you from being rewarded.
Balaam answered Balak,
Did I not tell the messengers you sent me? Even if Balak gave me his palace filled with silver and gold, I could not do anything of my own accord, good or bad, to go beyond the command of the Lord. And I must say only what the Lord says. Now I am going back to my people. But come, let me warn you of what this people will do to your people in days to come.
Then he uttered his oracle.
The oracle of Balaam, son of Beor, the oracle of one whose eye sees clearly, the oracle of one who hears the words of God, who has knowledge from the Most High, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate, and whose eyes are opened. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab, the skulls of all the sons of Sheth. Edom will be conquered. Seir, his enemy, will be conquered, but Israel will grow strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city.
Then Balaam saw Amalek and uttered his oracle.
Amalek was first among the nations, but he will come to ruin at last.
Then he saw the Kenites and uttered his oracle.
Your dwelling place is secure. Your nest is set in a rock. Yet you Kenites will be destroyed when Asher takes you captive.
Then he uttered his oracle.
Ah, who can live when God does this? Ships will come from the shores of Kittim. They will subdue Asher and Eber, but they too will come to ruin.
Then Balaam got up and returned home. And